On the line with us for our Conversations with Great Minds deep dive hour here is Jen Senko. Jen was first on this program years ago when the documentary The Brainwashing of My Dad came out. It's still available. Jen can tell us in just a moment where you can find it. But she now has a book out by the same title, based on the award-winning documentary, the Brainwashing of My Dad, and then the subtitle, How the Rise of the Right-Wing Media Changed a Father and Divided Our Nation and How We Can Fight Back. Jen, welcome back to the program.
Hi, Tom. It's great to be back with you.
Thank you. So I want to get into your dad's story. I mean, that's kind of the spine of the book. But before we do, in the book, you start out actually with the backstory, even before your dad was certainly before your dad started watching Fox News. In Chapter 1, the Great Depression, the New Deal, and the Nazi propaganda that paved the way for extreme right-wing media. Can you explain this to us? We've got a lot of elbow room here. We've got a whole hour. We can dive into some detail.
Yeah.
What are you talking about here?
Okay. Well, first I just want to say we're sunk unless we can fix or fight the media, Tom. It has a very powerful, almost magical effect on all of us. It's how we get our information about what's going on in our world, but not only that, it does shape who we are and what we believe more than we like to think it does. So I went back to FDR. He was one of the only ones that was paying attention to the propaganda that was going on in Germany before World War II. And he noticed the incredible effect it was having on the German people. And he thought, well, if this is what happens when you have one-sided media, one-sided radio, especially because there was radio back then.
I have a clip. Can I interrupt with a clip?
Oh, you bet.
This is FDR talking about exactly what you're talking about. This is Franklin Delano Roosevelt as President of the United States.
Remember, a number of years ago, there was a book, Mein Kampf, written by Hitler himself. The technique was all set out in Hitler's book, and it was copied by the aggressors of Italy and Japan. According to that technique, you should never use a small falsehood, always a big one, for its very fantastic nature would make it more credible. If only you keep repeating it over and over and over again.
There you go.
If we only had someone that courageous now who can actually just tell the truth about it. But I think that right-wing media has everybody kind of like shell-shocked and, on the defensive and almost like abused spouses. People are so afraid to bring up like the fairness doctrine, like that's a bad word, or, talk about any kind of fairness going on in the media. So,
or even look at what Canada banned Fox News.
Yeah.
They just said, we don't want, that's poison. We don't want it here.
Yeah, it's very dangerous, Fox News, for many, many reasons. I mean, people talk about social media and all that, but Fox News is the seedbed of a lot of this. A lot of this emanates from Fox.
So back to the 1930s. I'm sorry, I derailed you there.
Oh, sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so anyway, I think that's where a lot of things started with FDR. First of all, he had the foresight to see how powerful media could be, and was alarmed by it, and so came up with the Radio Act of I think it was 1929, and then created later on all these rules for ownership, and that there had to be, and in the Fairness Doctrine there had to be diverse opinions. So he had a lot of foresight, and his other thing, the New Deal, is sort of when the wealthy kind of got up on their heels and thought, oh no, we're going to have to pay more taxes. So he started a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, he absolutely did. And these techniques, as you talk about, the genuinely paved the way. So you're for right-wing media. I'm sorry.
Right. The tactics, a lot of the tactics. That was so funny as I was researching what a lot of the Nazi tactics were. I was thinking, oh my gosh, that's what right-wing media does. And I'm sure that Roger Ailes delved into it, and many learned from it. Why not? I mean, they were smart and they knew what they wanted to do, so yeah, they wanted to learn from the best, quote unquote.
Right, and even in the 30s, this was not a new idea. I mean, Niccolo Machiavelli wrote The Prince back in, the 1530s or something like that. I mean, it was a long time ago. Yeah. So from there you go to, that's your first chapter. From there you go to The Right is Declared Dead. What are you talking about here in your chapter 2? Oh,
okay. So I'll just do like a little bit of real quick history before that. Mm-hmm. I mean, the right was really pissed off after, I hope I can say that on your radio show. That's fine. After FDR had the New Deal, and it saved the Depression, and there was a middle class that was growing, and then Brown versus Board of Education happened in 1954, and this guy, Buchanan, I can't
James
remember
Buchanan.
His first name right. Yeah, he got very upset about it because he didn't want to be paying taxes for everybody to go to school, especially black kids, but it kind of started him on this quest to turn back the clock in a way, and he enlisted the help of Koch, the father Koch, and Fred. They kind of, were researching and thinking, what can we do, and then later on, the Birch Society was created, and at the time, I grew up in the 60s, so I remember the Birch Society, and everybody thought, oh my gosh, these people are so kooky. But it is exactly kind of like what's happening now and the thoughts that are being held by the right. But anyway, so Goldwater actually ran on the Birch's platform. And so because they were just considered kooky, and they were for small government, like no government pretty much, and everybody was a communist, even General Eisenhower. They were like McCarthy plus. So when Goldwater ran on that platform, he just got slaughtered by Johnson. And at that time, also, there were movements afoot that were going on that were trying to break free from, restrictive social mores and equal rights for everybody. There was a burgeoning middle class. And then there were these shows on, like Rowan and Martin, and, it just seemed it was in to be liberal. Mm-hmm. And so the right was declared dead by pundits. And so that's when they started to really organize and say, okay, well, what are we going to do about it? Well, number one, since the media, people like Walter Cronkite, tell the truth, that doesn't look that good for us. So we better start painting the media as liberal. So they created an organization called AIM, A-I-M, and to
was accuracy in media, wasn't it?
Right. And
this was Lee Atwater's famous. We need to work the refs. The referees being the media.
Yeah, that's right. And so that was like the beginning of it. That was their goal, and they even got on boards, broadcast corporation boards to influence them, and they would really. This is when the screaming started. It was a coordinated attack to anybody that had anything liberal on and didn't have anything conservative on. They would attack them. Mm-hmm. Okay, and so they kind of like built that up. And that happened there, but I could go on.
Yeah, well, feel free to wrap that up if you want, and then we'll hit a break
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, that parlayed next into I was going to talk about Roger Ailes, and Roger Ailes. Everybody, all these pundits. This is what people get wrong about Fox. So a lot of people in the media think that Fox only got bad and extreme after 9/11, or that maybe it leaned a little conservative. Sure, it didn't start out as extreme as it got. It gradually got more and more extreme as simultaneously, and not coincidentally, the Republican Party got more extreme. But for those that don't know or forget, Rupert Murdoch hired Roger Ailes to create Fox, and they both had an agenda. Roger Ailes wanted a TV station that would make the GOP look good.
Yeah, he'd pitched it to Nixon.
That's right. It was a secret memo that was unearthed in the annals of the Nixon Library. And it actually outlined a clear strategy for creating a TV news station that would promote a GOP agenda. It was even called a plan for putting the GOP on TV news.
Right.
So the plan laid out how it could use biased media to create GOP viewers and thus GOP voters. It wasn't planned to serve the GOP, like people who already were. And it was planned to convert viewers. And it stated it was going to be easy peasy because it stated people are lazy, they want their thinking done for them.
In our conversations with great minds here, this is about her book, The Brainwashing of My Dad. So Ailes gets hired. There's a fascinating op-ed. I don't know if you're familiar with it, that was written by Kevin Rudd, who was the Prime Minister of Australia back 15 years ago or thereabouts. And it's titled Rupert Murdoch, and it was in the Sydney Morning Herald, which is kind of their New York Times. And it was titled, Rupert Murdoch is the cancer that is destroying Australian democracy. And in that, he lays out how Murdoch basically, rewrote politics in Australia by ending up owning more than half of all the newspapers by circulation in the country, and then, picking up media channels as well. And then he went on to the United Kingdom, and he did the same thing there. And then he came to the United States, and he's doing the same thing here.
Right.
So you've got Roger Ailes being hired by Rupert Murdoch. Who's driving the cart here?
Well, I think that they were like a perfect a match made in hell. They kind of like coincided. I mean, Rupert Murdoch, to me, he wanted control. He's a major control freak, and he wants things to. You're right. What happened is when he bought all these newspapers, he realized that he could get in a politician that he liked and then get them out when he was done with them. So that's why he started doing this, almost all over the world, in New Zealand and England, and then came here, and Reagan made him a citizen. Thank you very much, Mr. Reagan, in 1985, so that he could buy more media. And this was as media rules, media ownership rules were, gradually like loosening up.
Right.
So, then he just expanded his empire even more, especially after the Telecommunications Reform Act in 1996. But that's jumping ahead. The other thing you asked that was driving, I think when you asked what was driving this, are you referring to just between Limbaugh and Murdoch?
Between Ailes and Murdoch. Ailes was famously
that's what
paranoid.
I meant.
He was. His house was like barricaded. I mean, at least according to the documentary on him I saw, Citizen Ailes, I think it was. He was a little nutty. And Murdoch is more of just, from everything I've been able to read, just your old-fashioned right-wing billionaire who thinks of himself as the master of the universe, the guy who's smarter than everybody else, and everybody just needs to think like me.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
So
he even one time said that, dictatorship probably wouldn't be so bad.
yeah. So do you think that Murdoch was motivated more by a desire to make money on this right-wing shtick? Or
No.
that, or the ideology itself?
I think he wanted to do both.
Yeah.
I think he wanted control. And that's another thing that people get wrong, is that they think that Fox is just doing this to make money. But they figured out how they could actually get people hooked. You know, Roger Ailes was a genius that way by introducing anger and emotion into these newscasts. You'd never seen emotion and all that in newscasts before. You know, it was Walter Cronkite who was, just...
Nice boring news. Yeah. The brainwashing of my dad. So now we have in place this right-wing media machine, Fox News, with Roger Ailes, running it, designing it to be as addictive as possible, with lots and lots of emotion, and particularly addictive for older men, because you've got a lot of, the bimbo blonde kind of stereotype thing just really came into full blossom with Fox News. And go ahead.
Yeah, there was another reason why it appealed to older white men. It wasn't just because he had those leggy blondes who were required to wear short skirts. That was one, I'm sure that was one big motivating reason. But also, white men at that time, with all of the social movements that had been going on since the 70s, I mean, they were dying down, but they kind of felt like they were being phased out. They would have to reinvent themselves. They were angry. They knew that the system was rigged, but they didn't know how, and they didn't know who to blame. So here you have the guilty party to blame, telling them, hey, I know why you're so mad. It's Democrats. Everything fell under the umbrella of Democrats, like whether it was race or culture, anything that smacked of being liberal, that was demonized. And so that's what they latched onto. They were angry, and so there was a port for them to dock their ship in.
Yeah, I remember in the 50s and 60s, the argument, my dad took me to a Birch Society meeting when I was like 12 or 13.
Wow.
The argument was black people are coming for your jobs. By the 70s, as the women's movement was happening, it was white people, women are coming for your job. And,
right.
And then, of course, you've got all this social ferment as we go into the 80s, and Ailes is starting Fox News, and then they're both coming for your job. So
then it's what?
Then they're both coming for your job. It's the black people, right. is the women, and then of course Trump kicked off his campaign with the Mexicans are coming for your job. Oh my God, and the Muslims want to come blow up your buildings, and so let's all get hysterical here together and be totally freaked out.
And the Democrats are letting in all the immigrants in order to replace you white folk.
Exactly. So we're talking with Jen Senko. The book is The Brainwashing of My Dad, How the Rise of the Right-Wing Media Changed Father and Divided Our Nation, and How We Can Fight Back.